In the autumn of 1977, Queen played a concert at Bingley Hall in Stafford, England. It was a large show, part of the A-Day at the races and then News of the World touring cycle, a period when Queen were selling out arenas across the UK and had established themselves as one of the most formidable live acts in the country. When the show ended, they left the stage. The crowd did not simply clap. They did not simply chant the band's name. They sang a football song, "You'll Never Walk Alone," the Rodgers and Hammerstein composition that had become the unofficial anthem of Liverpool Football Club and of British football culture more generally. All of it together, with the specific quality of a crowd that does not need to be led, that has found a way to be present in a moment that the usual methods of expressing presence cannot adequately contain. Brian May stood in the wings of Bingley Hall and heard this and did not say a word. He went home. He slept. And the next morning he woke up with "We Will Rock." You fully formed in his head the stomp, the clap, the melody, the three verses, the whole architecture of a song designed to make what he had heard at Bingley Hall happen at every show for the rest of Queen's career. The crowd had given him the idea. He had gone home and built them an instrument for it. 1977 was a specific and significant moment in Queen's career and in British rock history simultaneously. The punk explosion had changed what British music was supposed to sound like: stripped down, direct, hostile to the kind of theatrical excess that Queen had built their identity on. The music press, never uniformly kind to Queen, was even less kind in a cultural moment defining itself against everything Queen represented. But the audiences were telling a different story. The venues were getting larger. The tours were lasting longer. The specific relationship between Queen and the people who came to their concerts, the intensity of it, the sense that something was happening in those rooms that was more than entertainment, was becoming the most significant fact about the band. More significant than the critical reception. The audience was arriving in tens of thousands and showing them something the critical conversation had not found language for. Bingley Hall was the night Brian May found the language for it. The specific event at Bingley Hall in Stafford happened at the end of the concert, in the moment after the final encore. Queen had finished. They had walked off the stage. The usual thing that happens at a large rock concert had not happened. The crowd had not simply erupted into sustained applause and then begun to filter toward the exits. Instead, they had started singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," a song that every person in that room knew from football culture, from the specific tradition of English crowd singing that belongs to stadiums and terraces, and the specific communal rituals of British sport. They sang it to Queen, not because Queen had asked them to, not because it was on any set list or any call and response prompt that the band had set up, simply because the crowd had found in that song a way to express something about what the night had been that ordinary applause could not contain. Brian May has described hearing it in the wings with a quality of honesty about what it did to him that goes beyond typical musician remembering a great gig language. He said it was quite an emotional experience. He said they were completely knocked out and taken aback. He said it in the specific way he says things that actually mattered, simply, without elaboration, with the fullness of what the simplicity contains. An English football crowd singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" is not a small thing. It is one of the most powerful examples of mass human voice in British culture. 60,000 people in Anfield singing a Rodgers and Hammerstein show tune from 1945 with the specific intensity of people for whom it has become something more than a song. When a rock concert crowd of thousands sang it to Queen, unprompted, at the end of a show, what Brian May heard was not an encore request. He heard a capability. He heard what a crowd of people could do with their voices when the right conditions existed. He went home thinking about those conditions. And the next morning he woke up knowing what he was going to build. Brian May has described the specific quality of waking up with "We Will Rock You" in his head. Not constructed, arrived. The way that certain creative solutions arrive completely formed in the space between sleep and waking, presenting themselves as a fait accompli when consciousness returns. He woke up with it. The stomp, stomp, clap, the melody, the three ages of man, the boy, the man, the old man who has found his place in the universe. A song designed to require no instruments except the human body, so that everyone in the room could participate regardless of where they were standing. Designed for the principle, the Bingley Hall crowd had demonstrated that a large group of people, given the right structure, could lead the performer rather than simply follow. He had gone to sleep thinking about this. He woke up with the answer. While Brian May was arriving at We Will Rock You through audience participation and the Bingley Hall experience, Freddie Mercury was independently arriving at We Are the Champions. The two songs were written separately, both men responding to the same question. What does the relationship between Queen and their audience actually require from the music? Brian May's answer was structural, a song the audience could stamp and clap and lead, requiring nothing except a body. Freddie Mercury's answer was emotional, a song about collective victory that the audience could claim as their own. The two answers were designed, from the beginning, to be played together. We Will Rock You primes the crowd. We Are the Champions receives them. The recording of We Will Rock You contains one of the most specific intersections of Brian May's twin careers, rock musician and astrophysicist, that exists anywhere in Queen's catalog. He wanted the stomp stomp clap to sound like 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, or all the people who would ever be in a room where the song was played. He and the band went to Wessex Studios, got on a drum riser in a church-like space, and recorded themselves stomping and clapping, many times. Then he added the delays. Not randomly, with the specific mathematical precision of someone who has a PhD in astrophysics and who understands how sound behaves across distances in large spaces. He used delay durations in the ratios of prime numbers, a technique now known as non-harmonic reverberation, to create the specific quality of many feet at many different distances from a listener, to simulate not just the sound of stamping, but the physical reality of a large crowd stamping at slightly different times because they are standing at slightly different distances from the source. Brian May made the stomp sound like 1,000 people. The original recording is four people in a church space, stomping and clapping, run through a delay system designed using prime number ratios calculated by a man with a doctorate in astrophysics. That is the recording that has been heard in every sports stadium, every film, every advertisement, every party, every moment of collective excitement for 47 years. The specific sound that everyone in the world knows was made by four people in a physicist's delay system. That is the whole of how We Will Rock You was produced, and it worked because the physics was right. When Brian May presented We Will Rock You to the band at rehearsals, Roger Taylor's initial reaction was the reaction of a drummer encountering a rock song that contains no drums. The song is, in its purest form, entirely a cappella, except for the final guitar solo. No bass, no conventional percussion, no conventional instruments of any kind for the first minute and 45 seconds. Roger Taylor has described his early ambivalence about the track in various interviews across the years, the specific discomfort of a drummer being handed a song that doesn't require a drummer. What he was ultimately given was not a drumming role in the conventional sense, but a conducting role. He had to make the stomp swing to give the physical rhythm a quality that pulled it forward rather than letting it stall. He conducted the recording, the stamping and clapping, rather than playing through it. And then, for the live performances, a faster rock version was developed alongside the original, with full band instrumentation that was used to open the shows. Roger Taylor got his drums back. The original got its church space stomp. Both versions coexist in Queen's live history, each serving a specific purpose in the arc of a concert. The song was released as a double A-side with We Are the Champions in October 1977. It reached number 2 in the UK. And then something happened that Brian May had not fully anticipated. It was adopted by sports. Not one sport, all sports. Not one country, every country. The stomp, stomp, clap became the sound that stadiums reach for when they want collective energy. American baseball, Olympic ceremonies, every form of mass gathering. Brian May had written it for Queen's rock audience, with British football crowds singing as his inspiration, and it ended up as the sound that every stadium on earth uses to express collective excitement. He woke up with it in his head. Within 5 years, every stadium was using it. The specific thing Brian May understood in the wings at Bingley Hall was something about the relationship between a performer and a crowd that most rock music had not yet articulated. Rock music in 1977 was still primarily a transaction. The performer performs, the crowd receives. The crowd participates in a limited way. They applaud, they cheer, they sing along, but they do not lead. What Brian May heard at Bingley Hall was the crowd leading. A crowd that had found a song that was not a Queen song at all and made it the thing they gave back to the band. That giving back that moment of the crowd leading is what We Will Rock You was designed to make permanent. Brian May said it himself. I thought, how interesting if I wrote something the audience could participate to the point that they could lead the band. Concerts were not interactive in that sense when that song was born. You went to bang your head and not much else. You did not sing along to a Led Zeppelin show. Brian May said this. He built We Will Rock You specifically to change this, to create the conditions where the crowd could do what the Bingley Hall crowd had done. At every show, in every venue, with a song that was theirs to participate in rather than simply receive. Every stomp at every stadium since 1977 is the Bingley Hall crowd, in a different building, in a different decade, still doing what they did that night. The moment that confirmed what We Will Rock You had become, the moment that made the full scale of its reach visible even to the people who had made it, was the Live Aid performance of July 1985. By that point, the song had been in the repertoire for 8 years, had been played at hundreds of concerts, had been recorded and covered and used in contexts that Brian May had not anticipated when he wrote it. But Live Aid was something else. The Radio Gaga moment, 72,000 people in Wembley Stadium doing the synchronized clapping from the music video, spontaneously without instruction, was not We Will Rock You specifically. But it was the direct descendant of what Brian May had understood at Bingley Hall, that a crowd of people, given the right structure, could become something that exceeded the sum of their individual presences. Brian May said about Live Aid that it was a big moment of realization that this had broken through to something more than a rock audience, had reached a public consciousness. We Will Rock You had broken through years before. Live Aid confirmed what had already happened. We Will Rock You now exists outside Queen in a way that virtually no other Queen song does. It is played at sporting events by people who may not know it is a Queen song. Eminem used the Stomp Stomp Clap Until I Collapse. Megan Thee Stallion covered it in 2024. The Queen musical ran in London's West End for 12 years. The song has been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, ranked by Rolling Stone on the 500 greatest songs of all time. Every royalty payment from every sporting event where that stomp plays contains, somewhere in its accounting, a payment traceable to a crowd in Stafford in 1977 who sang a football song to a rock band when the show was over. He woke up with it fully formed, the stomp, stomp, clap, the 3 ages of man, the song with no drums and no bass and no instruments for the first 105 seconds. He made it with 4 people in a church space and a delay system calculated using prime number ratios. It went to number 2 in the UK in 1977. It is still playing in every stadium on earth. This is not a success story. This is the story of a man who heard something in a crowd and understood, immediately and completely, what it meant, and who had the specific knowledge and the specific skill to turn what he had heard into the most universally recognized rhythmic pattern in the history of popular music. Brian May went home from Bingley Hall and slept and woke up with We Will Rock You in his head, not composed during the night received. The problem he had been holding, how do you give back to a crowd what the Bingley Hall crowd had given him? How do you make that quality of a large group expressing something in unison a permanent feature of every Queen concert rather than an unrepeatable accident? The answer was, write them a song they can play with their bodies. Give them the rhythm. Let them lead. Bingley Hall gave him the question. The night gave him the answer. And every stomp, stomp, clap in every stadium since 1977 is the answer still being given in building after building, by crowd after crowd in the specific way that great solutions keep solving the problem they were built for long, after the person who built them is gone.